Hello, bass family, and welcome to Everything Bass. You know, I have to tell you, I'm so pleased that a good majority of you are reaching out wanting more jazz studies, more something that's small bites. Like, you know, my promise to you is to do something that's a quick video. You can get the information, go back to your practice room, and just nail it. And a lot of you have been really wanting more jazz. And so I've been trying to balance the videos that I put for the people wanting jazz between the creating jazz walking bass lines tutorials, that series, and this series, the 7-day real book workout. And if you remember this, you know, we're several in now, but this is something you do for a week. You focus on one song, you try to get as much juice out of that, you know, fruit as possible, trying to approach it in a variety of ways, really focusing on it. Today I'm choosing All Blues by Miles Davis, and I was playing the composed bass line. A composed bass line for jazz standard is a bass line that's written that the composer wants you to play it that way, not improvise, not just walk as you would with many jazz standards, kind of being able to make up your own line. Now, why did I choose this song? And I know some people might be going, "Oh, it's all dominant chords, and it's basically, you know, a small tweak on a jazz blues." Well, first of all, I like featuring it because it's so popular, and I say that like in all my career playing and sitting with jazz bands and being invited on stage, or it's a band I'm actually in regularly, All Blues is in the mix. And I remember my first private lesson with Stuart Ham. He actually walked me through and taught me the melody, taught me the bass line, and he wanted to improvise over it. And it's a good gateway to be able to work on your soloing because all the chords are the same. The form is somewhat familiar. There's a little tweak we'll talk about. If you're familiar with All Blues and you've played it over and over and over again, I'm hoping to give you some challenging things you can work out on it. And that's the 7 days that we're going to work on. Okay. So again, if you're a Patreon subscriber, follow the link in the description below and go and download the sheet for this. All the drills will be written out. If you don't need the melody written out, because I did also write the melody as accurate to Miles Davis's version, because there's a lot of versions of this. Because it's a great, I mean, it's a legendary, iconic jazz standard. So a lot of people have done their own covers and changed some things, sometimes radically, but I always dig it. But this is true to Miles's melody. So if you want to get that, and then of course the assignments are listed out below. The progression, of course, is you can follow the chord progression by watching the chords over the melody line. So let's talk about the composed bass line, just in case you've not ever worked on this before. It's pretty much you play it through the progression, keeping juxtaposed this pattern that I'll show you, and it's what I was playing on the intro. Now the tune is in 6/8. And you start by playing the root. The first chord's G7. You're playing the root. Then you play the fifth of the root up to the major 6, back to the 5th. So go. Now the next chord is actually F. You're actually playing the minor 7. And then, so it's funny, you play G, and then you play 5, 6, 5, minor 7, 5, 6, 5. And you kind of get this vibe. Like that. And people might ask, well, can't you play it with open strings? Sure, yeah. If I'm playing the upright, I usually play it with the open strings, and that's normally what I see. But I like this because it becomes a good stretch for me. I can control, and all the timbre of each note's the same because they're all fretted. I just like it. Now when you go to the C, you keep the same pattern. Root, 5, 6, 5 minor 7, 5, 6, 5 root. Now the tweak I talk about is, so normally, you know, you've got a slow change blues. It stays on the 1 chord for 4 bars, goes to the 2 chord for 2 bars, goes back to the 1 chord for 2 bars, goes to the 5 chord, which it does here, which is D7. Then it goes for half of the 6/8 measure up to E flat, back to D, and that's all in one measure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then back to the 1, and you stay on the 1. So, well, let's talk about the assignments, then I'll talk about that. So the first one is listen to the original Miles Davis recording a minimum of 3 times. And that's the easiest assignment in the world because it's awesome. You know, this is a tune that shows the beauty of minimalism. The melody is minimal. It's not a lot of notes. There's no fast runs. Miles' solo is gorgeous, but it's spacious. He plays with tension. He plays with notes, and it's a lot of fun to kind of listen to. It's also a good one for your ear training. If you want to learn a note for note a solo, forget that it's a trumpet. It doesn't matter. Learn the pitches on your bass. Mimic his feel. It's very cool. All right, so listen to it 3 times. Don't just focus on the bass line. Focus on whoever's soloing at the time. Try to get some ideas. Just listen. Don't be playing bass. We talked about this before. Don't have your bass plugged in and on. In fact, it'd be best if assignment number 1 is you just listen to it. If you're someone who drives a lot during the day and can play music in your car, then loop this and just listen to it. Minimum 3 times. The more the better. You're going to really internalize a lot of the music you're going to be hearing. All right, number 2, analyze and memorize the melody. If you guys have been following this, you know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to really do it for you this time. But the idea is look at the note and look about what the chord that the note is under and how do they relate. So I'll just do the very first one. You look and the first note is a B. And then it's over a G7. So he's playing a major third. So that's it. He's got this. So that's what I'm talking about, analyze. Look at the note. The next note's a D. Well, how does that D relate to the G7 chord? Is it in the chord? If it is, what is the value? What is the interval it is? So you can memorize it. That makes it easier to transpose to another key and things like that. So do that. If you want me to check your work, then absolutely just the easiest is through Patreon. But if you're not a Patreon subscriber, just reach out to me at dtitus@daletitus.com and write it out. Let me know what you did, and then I can check and make sure your analysis is correct. And then, of course, memorize it. Now, this is a very minimal melody. You're starting. So it's super simple to memorize. You might just take a couple minutes, memorize it. Really pay attention to the notes he's playing under the C7. I love those note choices. And then play along with the recording. So analyze, memorize, so you don't need to look at the sheet music. Play along with the recording. Try to capture as much of his stylings as possible. Is he slowly vibratoing a note? Try to mimic that. Really get out of your way of playing for a second, because what happens is when sometimes you focus on the way other people express through their instruments, regardless of what instrument it is, it can add a new dimension to your playing that you'll just dig. So that's number 2. Number 3, analyze and memorize the original composed bass lines. Oops, I forgot that was assignment. I kind of did it for you. But follow, listen along, follow along, look at what the notes, when's he play a root, what other notes you're doing. That one's going to be pretty easy, but memorize it. Play along with the recording. And it's great because it's a long recording. So if you just look at and wanting to groove with something, put on the original recording and play just the bass line. Don't even worry about soloing. Just get the bass line down. Does yours sound blocky? Well, why? Are you playing too staccato? Like if you go, that's not really gonna groove. Try to grab the vibe. You might notice I'm vibratoing the minor 7 and the tonic. That came from just actually a NAMM show jam. I was with Warwick at the time and jamming with some people, and there was a bass player for a music store. Came in, really good bass player, and we were just trading off. I was playing chords, he'd play the bass line, one of us is solo and stuff. And I just loved the vibe he had, and he was just shaking the G, shaking that. Now remember, your vibrato has to be in time. It can't just be like, unless you're going for this chaos effect. So anyway, learn the bass line, play along with it. You'll be able to always be able to sit in with a jazz band if no one's played this tune and you're a little nervous. You tell the band director, hey, I'd love to sit in if you let me, or maybe you're invited to sit in and say, hey, can we play all blues? You've got this one in the book. You've got it memorized, regardless of the key, because it's easy to move the progression to different keys. All right, now 4. Experiment with adding improvised elements to the composed bass line without destroying the vibe. Yeah, we're playing this a lot, and if people are really jamming, you can find yourself just kind of almost falling asleep at the wheel. So there's cool little variations you can make, but you can't do so much that you ruin the vibe. Now, what I like to do, if we've established for a while, I'll sit in and just play it until like the melody's done, maybe the solos are starting, because I really want to make sure the audience has got a bedrock of the tune. But then what I might start doing is on the fourth measure, which is the fourth time we're playing G7, I might play a variation there. I might, be kind of playing normal. I play it 2 times normal. There's a little variation. See, I'll just play a little. Now I'm using mixolydian as my framework, my scale framework. If you don't know about mixolydian, check out my the videos on my channel. You'll see Mode 5 mixolydian as the title of a video. You can search on that. So we got that, and so experiment with it. Especially now, I forgot to talk about when you go to the 5 chord, you play that. Then you go to E flat, but you only have 3/8 notes worth. So sometimes I'll just, I'll play, just try it. And back to it. You can, I've seen bass players just hold dotted quarter notes. Sometimes I'll go root, 5, major 6. And if I'm feeling particularly chanté, I'll play the same intervals backwards on the D7. So it sounds like this. Whatever. That's where you can take some time. Don't put a time limit on it. Just if you have a drum machine that plays 6/8, or you put the recording on, because the bass is kind of back in the mix, so it's easy to kind of play over. And just experiment with little adjustments at first. I would suggest using mixolydian. Some people use dorian because they want that minor third sound, but start with mixolydian and see how you can tweak the bass line, but without ruining that really cool swinging kind of vibe to it. You'll know when you ruin it, and in my early days I would start getting really nutty, and you can always tell when like the band turns around and looks at you and you're like, okay, my bad, testing the waters. I now know where the boundary is. And that's a fun assignment, man. Just taking time, figuring out how you can tweak the bass line without losing its soul. All right, now we're getting into the soloing improv section. Now, yes, it's easier in one way because all the chord qualities are the same. Dominant 7, dominant 7, dominant 7, dominant 7. So that's in one way easy. But then there's more of an onus on you. There's more of like, okay, yeah, progression's easy. What are you going to do with it? And that's kind of, where I like playing over this tune. I like to see if I can do something a little more adventurous. So it says, number 5, improvise a solo using just chord tones, trying to flow all over your fingerboard. So if you're taking a solo, first of all, this is where you should get away from this vibe. And the quickest way to do that is play long notes. So it comes time, someone nods at you to solo, your first chord is G7, maybe you start on the 5, you slide to the D, and hang there for a while. But just, using chord tones. Again, if you're unfamiliar with that, look for my dominant 7th video where I go through what chord tones are, what makes up dominant 7th chord. And flow. Try not to get stuck playing in one area too long. One cool, this is not an artistic element. It's not going to sound beautiful, but it's a systematic, is try to always, every time the chord changes, go to a new spot in your bass. So if I decide to do the first 4 measures, I'll use these arpeggio tones. Now it's going to the C7. I'll jump up here. Going to the G7. I'll stay in this area. I won't go back to that old G. Going to the D, I'll jump down here. Playing that aspect will at least get you familiar where those arpeggios are found for that particular set of chords. You can go another approach, which is really kind of inspired by the minimalism that Miles uses, both in the melody and in his solo, is you might pick an area like here and try to play a few notes. Really play with tension. So don't just play roots. You might start by playing the 3rd of G, which is B. And then maybe a little transition. Played the minor 7, I'll hang up. Now when when it goes to the C, I'll transition to the E, the third. There's the 5 of C. All right, and then I'll play the D of the G. You know, see what I'm doing? I'm minimalistically playing. I'm really trying to pick my tones, play with tensions, find what intervals I like to be held out, what creates certain moods. If you're wondering, well, what's the right answer? There is none. It's how you want to express, how you want to play. I've known people that listen to Miles' a solo and don't particularly like it. It just doesn't fit their style, but there's nothing wrong with that solo, at the very least. So you do some arpeggio soloing, improvising. Another cool exercise is to take just 2 strings, the D and the G string as just an example, and play a chord tone only solo, so you can really kind of get out of the box shape, that 1 octave pattern. So on the G, see, those are all notes in the G7. Goes to the C7, right there. Then the D, there's the E flat. So you see what I'm saying? Just playing on 2 strings. And using just chord tones. Now next, 6, improvise a solo using the appropriate mixolydian mode for each chord. So again, mixolydian is the major scale with a flat 7. Now same thing, don't get stuck in one area, don't be root heavy. This is your chance to play with tones. Don't just play roots. Play different scale tones. Hear how the tension's created. You know, on the G7, by starting on the major 6. So you're starting on an E. How do I play with that? Where do I go? That makes it kind of resolve and feel good. But that note's important because it makes people feel. That's a really cool thing about tension and release. You're creating a tension, hopefully not gross, but something that makes people, oh, look out, and then you bring it home. That release is very pleasing. People like hearing us play with tensions, but we need experience to know what ones work at what time and things like that. And number 7, improvise solo using the Dorian mode for each dominant chord. And we talked about this, about how to spice up the dominant chord in the previous video, but the difference between mixolydian and Dorian is the third. All the other notes are the same. Mixolydian has a major third. Dorian has a minor third. The minor third is cool, you know, especially with soloing. I like it. So on the G7, instead of playing a B, I'm sorry, I played C7 there. Instead of playing a B, you play B flat. And so you get this, let me see. So play with that. And it's funny, I've assigned this to private students, and they'll say, okay, here's my Dorian solo, and they don't play the third at all. So really, they're still playing mixolydian in their mind, in their tonality. So you have to really play on that minor third, you know. So when it goes to C, play the E flat. Hear how that sounds. Resolve it. Control it. This is also a good time for you to record your practice and then listen to it later without your bass in your hand. So you can really listen and make note of, like, I did not like that, or I like that. And this is how you develop your own style. So those are the 7 examples. If you are watch this video and you are so like you've done all this, one thing I would say is play with Lydian flat 7. The Lydian flat 7 mode is particularly well suited for improvising over this because it has got a blues feel, and you're adding that augmented 4, which gives you that same transition that's found in the blues scale. So there's really cool. There's a lot of fun. So that's usually a little more advanced because that's a scale that not a lot of people work on, but this is a great vehicle to develop that. All right, so there's 7 exercises to get you through 1 week of focusing on all blues. By the way, like listening to it, number 1, listen to the original recording. That's not one and done. In fact, I kind of suggest that as you're going through these exercises, again, maybe away from the instrument, you're doing a chore around the house, you're driving somewhere, whatever, listen to it again because you'll have a different appreciation. When you've got the melody really memorized, you listen to the melody different. When you are working on improvising bass lines and adding little things without destroying the feel of the bass line, listen to what that bass player did. Listen to any transitions. So I do recommend that. And most of all, have fun. This is a great tune. Great tune. And many jams I've gone on to And, as I said before, this song's like in heavy rotation. So I hope you enjoy it. All right. Brothers and sisters of bass, thank you so much for stopping by, and I'll see you at the next video.